To the untrained eye, the Belcher family is just a wholesome comfort watch, but the version of Bob's Burgers you know is actually a lie. Beneath the puns lies a graveyard of cut footage and mental breaks the network desperately tried to bury. From surface level edits to level 5, where scripts became too intense and legally risky to ever be animated, we are descending into the abyss. Most viewers stop at the surface, but you need to see what is actually hiding in the dark. Level 1. The Safety Cleanup. We begin our descent with what looks like standard network interference, but upon closer inspection, it reveals a disturbing obsession with cleaning up reality. The show's early seasons possess a raw, almost wild energy that the network clearly viewed as a problem. Let's look at the evidence, specifically the Belchies. This season 2 premiere is widely regarded as a classic Goonies parody, but if we analyze the production notes and the cuts made by Standards and Practices, we see that the episode was originally a deep dive into pure panic. The plot revolves around the children breaking into an abandoned taffy factory scheduled for demolition. If we were to look at this from a legal perspective, the charges racking up here are huge. We're looking at breaking and entering, trespassing, and on the part of the parents, child neglect and reckless endangerment. The network censors, however, weren't worried about the law, they were worried about the consequences. Scenes involving the children navigating the rusted, decaying machinery were trimmed and softened because the original cuts were too intense. The danger felt too real. The Standards and Practices Department, the invisible hand that strangles creativity, feared that showing the children in genuine mortal peril would cause a breakdown in the younger audience. They stripped away the grit and turned a survival horror scenario into a fun adventure, but the scars of those edits remain. Then we have It Snakes a Village from Season 3. To the casual viewer, it's a funny road trip episode, but to the analytical mind, it is a crime scene of censorship. The episode features the family dealing with a house full of snakes, and the original drafts implied a much more chaotic, uncontrolled environment. We're talking about animal cruelty and gross negligence. The network forced the writers to tone down the interactions with the reptiles because they didn't want the audience to feel that ick factor. They wanted to avoid the reaction of seeing a child in a room full of constrictors. By removing these sharper edges, they aren't just editing a show, they're altering the reality of the Belcher universe to make it safer, cleaner, and ultimately, more sterile. But that's not even the worst part. These surface level edits are just the beginning. And as we move down the iceberg, the censorship stops being about safety and starts being about suppressing the human mind. Level 2. The Fron Files. We are now submerging to Level 2 where the water is getting colder. Here we encounter the Fron Files. This Season 4 episode is a critical piece of evidence in our investigation. The premise seems innocent enough. The students write essays about their future. However, the execution is a fever dream of repressed anger and wild delusion. The children's stories are not just cute, they are signs of deep-seated anger issues. Louise imagines a dark future where she takes out a robot version of her guidance counselor, and Gene imagines a world where he is a dictator of music. The network took one look at this and panicked. In the original broadcast and later reruns, specific reactions from Mr. Frond, the target of this fictional violence, were muted or cut because the writers crossed a line. They allowed the children to express a level of cruelty rarely seen in animation aimed at younger audiences. Let's analyze the crimes committed in this episode if we take the children's stories as real confessions. Conspiracy to harm someone, rebellion, and assault with a deadly weapon. The network's refusal to air the full unedited reactions create a disconnect. It's a form of trickery where they show us the violence, but they remove the consequence. They silence the victim to make the bullies seem easier to watch. It is a complete fracture of the mind. By softening the blow of these stories, the network is trying to hide the fact that the Belcher children are, clinically speaking, dangerous. Louise is not just mischievous. She displays traits of antisocial personality disorder. She manipulates, she plots, and she lacks remorse. And the banned or edited moments are often the ones that prove this diagnosis the most clearly. And let's be real, everyone knows the best way to avoid a mental breakdown from these secrets is to subscribe to the channel. The only way to stay safe from the censorship monster is to hit that like button. But the story doesn't end there. If you thought silencing the characters was bad, wait until you see how they silence the episodes themselves. Level 3. The digital tricking. Welcome to Level 3. The pressure is building as we leave the realm of broadcast television and enter the creepy nightmare of the streaming era. Here's the scenario. You are binge watching the show on Hulu or Disney+. You're in a flow state. And then suddenly, a gap. Season 1, Episode 5 is followed by Season 1, Episode 7. Where's Episode 6? This is not a technical error, this is digital tricking. The official story, the excuse they feed the masses, is music licensing issues. They claim that a sample used in the background of a scene had expired, legally forcing them to pull the episode. But if we look closely, this explanation feels convenient and watered down. These episodes vanish into the void, sometimes for months, sometimes forever, creating a sense of unease. You remember the episode existing, you remember the plot, but the platform tells you it isn't there. It is a modern digital version of burning books. We have to ask ourselves, is the licensing excuse just a cover for something darker? Rumors in the deep corners of the fandom suggest that some of the removals are soft bans triggered by changing cultural rules. A joke that was acceptable in 2011 is deemed wrong in 2025, so instead of addressing it, the bosses simply hit delete. They erase the history. This is rewriting history in its purest form because it implies that the show was always perfect, always safe, and always follows today's rules. It denies the growth of a show and the awkward, messy, and sometimes offensive reality of the early years. For the viewer, this creates a weird memory effect. You swear you saw a scene where Bob was high on pain pills, acting crazy and manic, but when you go to find it, the scene is trimmed, the dialogue is different, or the episode is gone. This is a violation of the viewer's trust. It creates a paranoid viewing experience where you feel the need to hoard physical media, DVDs, and Blu-rays just to prove that your memories are real. Because in the streaming age, you own nothing, and your favorite moments can be wiped out without a trial. But if you think the US censorship is bad, the horrors of the international edit will make your skin crawl. Level 4. The International Wipe. We're now at Level 4 where the light from the surface is gone. We're in the territory of the uncanny valley. When Bob's Burgers is exported to countries like the United Kingdom or parts of Asia, it undergoes a procedure I can only describe as a cultural wipe. The channels broadcasting the show overseas, like ITV2 in the UK, operate under strict regulations regarding viewing hours. This means that any content deemed too adult for a 6 p.m. slot is cut out. But they don't just cut out the bad words, they cut the context. Let's look at the charges. Destruction of property and fraud. In these international cuts, entire subplots are wiped out. References to Bob's medicinal habits, his reliance on wine or pills to cope with the crushing weight of his money problems, are blurred or zoomed out. Visually, this looks like a fever dream. You'll see a scene where a character is clearly holding an object, but a clumsy digital blur covers it, or the camera will pan away at a critical moment to hide a visual gag about anatomy. The dialogue is chopped up, leaving awkward silences where a punchline used to be. It creates a disjointed, eerie atmosphere where the characters are talking, but they aren't making sense. They're laughing at jokes we didn't hear and reacting to events we didn't see. It turns the show into a hollow shell. The working class struggle vibe is polished away, and the weirdness of the Belcher kids is toned down until they are just generic sitcom children. This is identity theft. The show's identity is stolen and replaced with a safe, compliant copy. It's genuinely disturbing to watch side-by-side comparisons because it feels like watching a person who has been heavily medicated. The soul is there, somewhere, but the spark is gone. And let's be real. The only thing scarier than a censored episode is an episode that was never allowed to exist in the first place. Level 5. The Forbidden Scripts. We have reached the bottom of the iceberg. Level 5. The pressure here is crushing. This is where we find the lost media. The concepts that were so dark and twisted that they were banned before a single frame was animated. We need to talk about the cannibal plot. Most fans know that the original pitch for Bob's Burgers involved the family being literal cannibals who ground up human flesh to make the burgers. The network, Fox, liked the family dynamic but rightfully decided that a show about cereal monsters might be a hard sell for advertisers. So they reskinned it and removed the cannibalism. But did they? If you watch the first season with a close eye, the cannibal DNA is still there. The way the characters talk about death, the way Louise is obsessed with violence, and the way Mort the Mortician is their best friend. The show is haunted by the ghost of its original murderous premise. But deeper in the void, there are rumors of other unproduced scripts. There was a concept discussed in the writer's room about burgers being outlawed. The premise involved the town banning meat, forcing Bob to open a speakeasy, a meat prohibition. This sounds funny, but the underlying theme was a total societal collapse with a police state descending on the Belcher family. It was deemed too political and too close to a dark thriller. Then there is the drowning concept. An idea floated around about Bob faking his ability to swim, leading to a situation at a pool party where his negligence nearly results in a drowning incident. The charge? Attempted involuntary manslaughter. The writers realized that watching a father figure almost let his family die due to his own insecure ego wasn't quirky, it was sick. It was too dark even for them. These unproduced ideas are the monsters in the dark. They represent the timeline where the show fully embraced its horror roots, and they are the episodes that would have scarred a whole generation. The fact that these ideas existed, that they were pitched, outlined, and considered, tells us that the wholesome nature of the show is a mask. The creators wanted to go darker. They wanted to push the envelope into the raw, the uncomfortable, and the weird. But the network kept the mask on tight. Is it better to watch the safe lie, or should we go looking for the dangerous truth? If you made it this far without breaking your brain, you might just be ready for the next deep dive. But that is a story for another time. Subscribe to survive, and until next time, try not to think about what went into burgers in the pilot.